She will be brought in for questioning, but it looks like she is clean. She will be losing her sugar daddy though, he won't have a pot to pee in when we're done. She's going to have a hard time, Bella. I guess that is her problem. William, Bella, I want you to know that my sister is so happy with her relationship with you. She was so depressed after her divorce. Is there any chance you might be my brother-in-law someday? I hope so, William. I guess it depends on if she wants me or not. I will tell you that I have fallen in love with your sister. It was Friday, and I was excited for my weekend with Ashley. She loves you too, Bella. I will let you know when we move in on Brockman. I bet you get a call from Callie. It was also the day that Callie and I got divorced. I made a quick stop at a convenience store on my way home from work. Beer was what I needed for the weekend. You can label what transpired next as fate, luck, justice, or anything else you want, but it was truly bizarre. Callie gave me a call. She desired to see me. I consented to have lunch with her. Ashley declined my invitation to go because she was aware of the situation. She put her trust in me to handle it. I hadn't gone to work in a week. As soon as they found someone to take my place, I was going to step down. Ashley and I were all too busy moving her in. I met Callie at a downtown nice restaurant. That was my recommendation. When I saw her, I was in shock. She didn't look good and had put on some weight. The past few days must have been extremely stressful. Her name had been brought up multiple times, and it had been all over the news. She was even allegedly Brockman's mistress, according to reports. As she walked in, I saw some people pointing and staring. We chose to take a seat outside in a spacious area. To have some privacy, we moved a table away from everyone else. We had a little conversation at first, but soon she began to cry. Bella, I made the biggest mistake of my life leaving you. I'm not just saying that because Ben got arrested. I realized it a few weeks after I moved in with Ben. At first, it was fun, but the money got old quick. I wasn't happy, and I wanted to throw up every time I had to have sex with him. I was not expecting this. I figured that money was all that mattered. The way she left me, Callie continued, I also began to feel so guilty at what I had done to you and Casey. Casey will barely even speak to me. You didn't deserve that, Bella. You were a good husband and a good provider. I had everything I needed. I just didn't realize it. Thank you, Callie. I appreciate you saying that, but you did what you did because you weren't completely happy with me. I was happy with you, Bella. I let that old goat get to me. I let him seduce me, then talk me into dumping you for him and all his money. The night before he was arrested, he made me let him in my ass. He is a disgusting, perverted old man. I hope he rots in jail. Although I kind of wanted to laugh, I refrained. Where is this going, Callie? What do you want from me? She raised her eyes in tears and said, Please take me back, Bella. I love you and I miss you terribly. I miss my home, the ranch, the horses, and everything we always did together. I will do anything to make this up to you. Callie, do you really miss me, or is this because you have no money, home, or job? I am flat broke, Bella, with no place to go. But I do miss you so much. I want things to go back to the way they were. Callie, I told you when you walked out that door, this was it. There will be no turning back, and your leaving would be permanent. I know, Bella, but I need you so bad. I am at the end of my rope. I have no one else to turn to. I'm sorry, Callie. I have met someone else, and we are in love with each other. The day will come when we will be married. We are not in any hurry because we have both been burned by our spouses. Tears streamed down Callie's cheeks as if she had been struck by a truck. She just cried there, I guess never thinking that I would move on too. I was compelled to feel sorry for her. Sure, after she left, I considered getting even, but now I felt compelled to assist her. Is there anything I can do to help you get back on your feet, Callie? She raised her eyebrows and replied, I guess I was dreaming to even think you would take me back. I don't blame you. I wouldn't take me back either. If you could find it in your heart to maybe loan me a little money until I find a job and get a place of my own. I am staying with a friend right now, but I need to get my own apartment or something. How much do you need, Callie? If you could loan me $5,000, I will start paying you back as soon as I get a job. The server delivered our meal. I wasn't particularly hungry, but Callie started eating. I watched her eat for a minute, thinking. I came up with a checkbook out of my pocket. I composed a check and gave it to her, neatly folded. I replied, Callie, this should help you get a new start. You are a good secretary, so you should be able to find a job. Let me know if you don't, and I will see what I can do. I'm sorry it all turned out this way. I wanted to grow old with you, hold hands when Casey said her wedding vows, watch our grandkids as they took their first horseback ride, and be buried next to you on a ranch. I guess it wasn't meant to be. Greetings and welcome to Chronicles of Lost Love. In mid-Ohio, the winter day was depressing. I had the flu, and there was a lot of snow and sleet blowing in from the northwest. We were constructing a house on a windswept rise, and I'm a carpenter. Recently, I've been working a lot of overtime in an effort to save money for our upcoming spring break trip to Panama City, Florida. Since we purchased the large new house that my wife had to have a few years ago, money has always been tight for us. As part of our family vacation down there, I was excited to see the college students relaxing on the beach. But today I was really feeling the effects of the weather, a fever, and a headache, so I told the foreman I was heading home. After glancing at me, he told me to leave immediately to avoid contracting pneumonia. I was happy to oblige, and in a matter of minutes, I was driving home in my old truck. I considered using my cell phone to give my wife a call, but given my current state of affairs, it seemed like too much work. I should tell you a little bit about myself before I delve too far into my story. I'm Ron Hardy, a 36-year-old man who stands 6 feet tall and weighs about 220 pounds. Okay, so I was a little wasted, but I enjoy drinking beer and unwinding when I'm not working. Even though I'm losing hair, I didn't stand a chance when it came to finding love, so whatever. My 16-year-old wife, who I now call Nell, is the love of my life. We were in the same graduating class, got married almost immediately after high school, and began our married life together at my parents' house. That was not too bad, because they lived in a large, spacious old house. The living situation worked because Nell and my mom got along well. I learned the trade of carpentry working with my dad, who got me a job with him. Nell is currently employed 3 days a week as a part-time assistant in a doctor's office, where she manages insurance claims and medical records. She provides the family with a little extra income. Nell is a pretty girl, not particularly glamorous, but still pretty. We have 2 kids, Brad, 15, and Angie, 13, who are good kids and average students, and we get along pretty well as a family. I tend to be the disciplinarian and Nell is the nurturer, which is probably how it should be. She is 5 feet 4 inches and weighs about 140 pounds. She carries a little extra weight like I do, but it looks good on her. After having 2 kids, she doesn't look bad at all. Anyway, I was leaving early. It was about 1:30 p.m. on a terrible day. All I wanted was to get home, take a long hot shower, take a big swig of NyQuil and a couple of aspirin, and go to bed. Since it was Nell's day off, I knew she would be a little tender, even though I didn't want to give her what I had. When I got home, I noticed our car was gone, but I figured Nell had gone shopping or something, so I closed the garage door and staggered through the house, upstairs to our bedroom, in the master shower, eager to feel that hot water pour over my miserable body. Entering the bedroom, I noticed that the bed was unmade, which I thought was odd because Nell always kept a very neat house, and she always had a fit if things were out of place or not neat. I started to strip off my clothes and throw them on the floor when I noticed wet spots on the bottom sheet of the bed left exposed by the thrown-back top sheet and comforter. I reached down with my finger and tentatively touched it. It was wet and felt slimy. I brought my finger to my nose and was shocked at the smell of a female and also a man. I thought, she's cheating on me. This sure wasn't my as we hadn't had sex for a couple of days. Hell, I thought some more, we hadn't had sex in over a week. I'd been too tired after getting home from working overtime and just ate and crashed into bed. I was in a quandary, but with the fever and headache, my brain couldn't function, so I decided to get my shower and medications and sleep till I could handle this new situation. Damn, I was upset and getting mad by the minute. The hot water felt good on my chilly body as I stepped into the shower, and once I dried off and changed into my pajamas, I took a couple of aspirins and a big gulp of NyQuil before starting to move our personal belongings from our bedroom down the hall to our guest room. While I was doing this, I heard the garage door open, which meant she was almost home, and I could hear footsteps rushing upstairs. There were voices in the kitchen now, which meant she was with someone, and I could hear footsteps hurrying upstairs. "Oh, you're home," she said, looking at me carrying some clothes down the hall and looking pale and shaky. I had to rush to school because the school called to say Brad was sick. "How are you feeling?" "No, I'm going to bed because I'm sick too," I informed her as I walked down the hall. "What's happening? Do you not sleep on our bed?" Her expression instantly turned shocked as she said, "No, I don't want to give the flu to you, and I know you don't want to give it to your lover." "What do you mean?" "Enter and simply examine the bed." "Tell me that's not what I read on the sheet, please. I had to rush to school, but I really didn't want you to find it." "Oh no, oh God. How do you intend to proceed?" With tears and agony streaming down her face, she leaned against the wall and asked. I told her as I walked into the guest room, "I'm not going to do anything until I can get through this thing I've caught, but you'd better be ready for an explanation and a reason when I feel up to handling it." "Where are you heading?" "May I ask?" she inquired. "I have to head to my room. I will never again sleep in that bed. You should be ready to tell me your lover's name as well, so you can keep it for him." I jumped in. "Oh please, honey, don't. Call me honey, please. I believe that since you have violated our wedding vows, our marriage is over. Until I can think of something to do, I'll be sleeping in this room." Oh God, was all I heard as I closed the door and crawled into the guest bed. The next thing I knew was that I was awake and in the dark. I felt my way to the side of the bed where Nell usually slept and saw it empty. Gradually, I realized where I was and started to recall why. I sat up, whispering to myself that I was hungry and that I found my robe before stealthily making my way downstairs to the kitchen. I turned on the light and saw that it was a little after 2 in the morning. I found some leftovers in the refrigerator and heated them in the microwave before sitting down to eat. At that moment, I realized that I was feeling better, allowing me to reflect about my marriage. I heard you come down when I heard a noise at the door, and when I looked up, Nell was staring at me while dressed in her nightgown. "Do you feel well enough to converse at this time?" As if she had been crying, her red eyes betrayed her question. "Yes, it is possible for us to speak." "Are you prepared to share it with me?" "I'll make an effort." "I believe I know who it is, but could you please double-check?" "I don't think I can tell you that." "So there's nothing to discuss, is there?" "I'll be moving out immediately." "Please, Ron, it's John." "I suppose you mean Dr. John Clemens." "Indeed." "For what duration has it persisted?" "For roughly 6 weeks." "Are you in love with him?" "I don't know. You were screwing him in our bed, which is where we conceived our children and, I assumed, where we shared our first kiss." "You don't know." "Then again, perhaps they aren't my kids." I had to inflict some pain on her. "Oh God, no, Ron, don't think that." "Is this the end?" "I don't know. I thought that was where we made love, but you don't know, and you were screwing him in our bed, the bed in which we conceived our children." "Then again, perhaps they aren't my kids." I had to inflict some pain on her. "Oh God, no, Ron, don't think that." "Is this the end?" "I don't know." "So you're seeking a divorce?" "No, I still adore you, and he has 3 children our age who are married. He's in the same predicament that I am. Like you, he is unable to leave his family, but still needs my love. Ron, do you really think I'm going to stick around while you're off taking care of another man?" I think you should be aware that, after you went to bed yesterday afternoon, I spoke with an attorney, and he informed me that, in this state, getting a divorce would be extremely costly for you. You would have to pay me child support and alimony in addition to the cost of the actual divorce. You would also forfeit the children's custody. Now that she had expressed her opinion, she sat there primly and composed, saying, I think it would be better if you let me continue my meetings with John until we eventually end our association. Do you really think that I will sit back and let you continue drilling your lover and cuckolding me while I work myself to death trying to support you in this lifestyle? I asked her, gritting my teeth as I stared at her in disbelief and growing rage. Will you be taking this stance and responding to this? I'm sure when you sit down and think about it, you will see that you may not have many other options, and yes, I believe that is my position. I replied, okay then. Tomorrow I will contact a lawyer and see what I can get in the way of a second opinion regarding my options, almost physically furious. After you've given it some more thought, I'll respond to you tomorrow night. Is that adequate? I hope you will allow me to have this brief affair because that's all it is, a brief affair, but I want you to know that I still love you. I'll be back in a few weeks, ready to be your wife once more, when it's over. I told her, let me be clear, I will never accept this in any form or circumstance. After you've finished screwing him, how am I supposed to be able to trust you that you won't do it again? You have disregarded our vow of matrimony, which we made in front of God, and you expect me to think that you won't do it again. Not in my opinion. I thought we could deal with this in a mature, sensible manner, but it seems like you want to be obstinate about it. You visit your attorney tomorrow to hear his opinion, and maybe that will help you change your mind. I'm about to go to bed. Nell, just keep this in mind. Since we've been married for 16 years, you ought to be fairly familiar with me. Is it really your intention that I take up your position? Good night. She left without responding, leaving me there where I sat, thinking about my situation. By 4 a.m., I had pretty well figured out what I would do. It would just take talking with the lawyer and my parents that day to bring it about. I went back to bed filled with grim determination. The next morning, I awoke about 9 a.m. and proceeded to put my ideas into effect. The kids had gone to school and Nell to work. By that time, the first order of business was to make an appointment with a divorce lawyer, which I set up for that afternoon. After eating breakfast, I went over to see my parents and had a long talk with them. They were appalled at what Nell was doing, but agreed that what I was proposing was the only way to respond to her and agreed to support me. Next, I went to Nell's parents and made them aware of what was going on in our marriage. They were shocked and couldn't understand their daughter's actions and how it affected our family. After I left them, I called our insurance agent and our family lawyer and made changes to my policy and my will. I then called my boss and talked with him for a while before going down to the bank. It was a very busy day, and it was late afternoon when I finished with a final phone call. I was now ready to meet with Nell and give her my response. While I waited for the kids to get home from school, I began to move stuff to my old truck. When Brad and Angie got home from school, I took them into the den, and we sat down for a talk. I figured they were old enough and told them what their mother was doing. They were both shocked and mortified at her actions. I explained to them what was going to happen, and I knew it hurt them deeply, but they understood. I assured them that whatever happened, they would be looked after. Then, I drove them over to my parents before Nell got home. Nell arrived home at her usual time, and when she came in the door to the kitchen, I was sitting at the table waiting for her. "Didn't you go to work today?" she asked. "No, I had some things to do," she just shrugged her shoulders and removed her coat. After hanging it up, she came to stand in front of me. "Where are the kids?" "They're over at my folks." "Have you given any thought about what we discussed last night?" she asked. "Yes, I've given it quite a bit of thought, and I met with a divorce lawyer today who confirmed what you've told me about my responsibilities in the event of a divorce. So then it's settled. You will let me have my little fling, and we can go on with our lives. No, you remember I told you I would not agree to sitting around here or supporting you while I'm being cucked. So, I've come up with other plans." "What are they?" she asked with a perplexed look on her face. I'm not going to divorce you. She immediately smiled. Then how are you going to avoid being cucked? Well, I might be being cucked, but I don't think it will be with John. I called his wife today and told her what was going on. I don't think you're going to have a job tomorrow. Oh, you didn't, she gasped out. I've also quit my job. I'm now unemployed. Her eyes almost bugged out of her head. Are you crazy? What are we going to live on? I think you should be asking yourself that question. What are you going to live on? What do you mean? I'm leaving you. I'm not divorcing you. If you want a divorce, you can get one and pay for it yourself. You can use abandonment as the cause. What about the kids? My parents have agreed to look after them if you're unable to support them. You may have to sign over custody to them so they can get them covered by health insurance. I've already talked to them, and your parents and mine know about your little fling and what you selfishly proposed. I don't think you're too popular right now with any of them. How could you do that? I'll get a lawyer and get the courts after you if you abandon me and the kids, she added the last as an afterthought. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to be a long way from here, and you might have hired someone to try to locate me. I don't think you're going to have the money to do that. And even if you found me, there is no way a court can force me to work if I don't want to. So, you are now responsible for making the mortgage payments, the car payments, and the payments on the new furniture you had to have. I've taken half the money I was saving to go to Florida, and I'm leaving you with my last paid check, which will be automatically deposited into our checking account. I've also changed my will and insurance policies to make the kids beneficiaries of any proceeds from them. You will get nothing from either of them. When you go to sell this house, you will find that paying off the mortgage and closing costs will eat up most of the equity we have in it. You are an a-hole. You are a 304 and a very selfish individual. You didn't know when you had it so good, you just wanted more. Standing up, I headed for the door. Have a good life, N. Walking out to my truck, which I had loaded up with my personal things and my tools, I backed out of the garage and drove away. That day, I drove all night to put as much distance between me and her as I could. I drove all night long until I was so tired I couldn't drive anymore. My direction was south to the Gulf Coast where construction work abounded, and I could lose myself in the anonymous life of an itinerant carpenter. I found others there in the same boat as I, constantly moving to avoid discovery by lost wives, lives, and families. My parents kept me informed about what had transpired after I left. Of course, Nell lost her job at the doctor's office, and his wife took him to the cleaners in a well-advertised divorce. He and Nell were never an item after that. Nell found work as a cashier at a supermarket but lost the house, the car, and all the furniture. She ended up in a cheap apartment with no chance of finding another husband to support her. Since she couldn't afford to divorce me, the kids ended up living with my folks, and they raised them. I sent money home to care for them and enough to start a savings fund for their college education. I also sent them cards and money at Christmas and for their birthdays and kept in touch by phone. 7 years after leaving, I traveled back home and was briefly reunited with my kids. Nell had never recovered their love and affection after I left, and they bonded with my folks. They turned out to be responsible people who had learned a lot about trust and loyalty in their upbringing. While I was back home, I went down to the store where Nell was still working as a cashier and took some items through her line. When she looked up and saw me, her shocked face turned ashen. When I asked her, "Are you having a good life now?" she fainted. I left without looking back. I never saw her again. Now for the second story. It was a cold Tuesday evening in mid-November, and Bruce Finley was still at his office. He was working on a contract that had to be done by Friday. Finley seldom procrastinated, and he was confident he could have it finished as early as the next morning. He neatly stacked the files he'd used and slipped them into the modern-looking mahogany cabinet behind his desk chair. He then locked it. Finley was in his late 30s, fairly tall, almost 6 feet 2 inches, and slim. He had a pale, somewhat angular face. He pulled on his suit coat, then his cashmere topcoat. His wardrobe was a bit more expensive than his income could justify. He ran a comb through his straight, thinning blonde hair and headed out the door. As he took the elevator to his parking level, he thought about his kids, both middle schoolers, and his wife. For weeks, Adam and Julia had given him happier thoughts than his wife, Bridget. God, she'd been such a witch lately, he muttered to himself. He thought about the sexy blonde waiting for him at the Hilton, and his mood brightened. He smiled in anticipation. He remembered how hot she'd been the week before. She was tall with good legs and a great body. She was a few years older than him, but God, she was hot. He'd never had anything like her. She really got into it. Jesus, did she have a hot body? She could almost squeeze him off without him moving, but then what fun would that be? He chuckled softly to himself as he headed down the dimly lit 80-foot parking ramp to level 4, looking forward to the coming 2 hours in Suite 606. He strolled leisurely towards his car through the shadows of the ramp, his eyes turned downwards, and his mind was far away. It's just as well Bruce Finley wasn't paying attention. Awareness would not have helped him, it would have only added a few seconds of needless panic before his happy everyday life would be rocked to its core. Hey, buddy, Finley began to stir a bit, and he could vaguely hear the voice of his assailant. You don't look so good. He looked like and would soon look worse. He felt it too, his aching testicles swelled as he shivered helplessly on the floor. You feeling better? That damn voice again. Who was it? He wasn't feeling better. Aside from the whole consciousness thing, he felt the skin on his face tighten. It would swell like a balloon in 10 minutes, by the next morning, it would be an ugly purple mass, and the colors would soon morph into one more or less disgusting shade after another. Your nose looks a little crooked. That's not good. You might want someone to take a look at it. Bruce Finley's senses and brain were beginning to connect with reality, the reality that had turned so terribly wrong over the preceding 3 minutes. He opened his eyes when he felt a warm trickle on his hand. He thought it was red. Just how red, he couldn't tell in the dim light. The drips were falling slowly, but from the amount of blood on his hand and on the dirty floor, it must have bled a lot when he went down. He weakly wiped the black cashmere sleeve of his coat across his nose and bleeding eyebrow. Bruce, wake up, sleepyhead. We need to talk. Funny. The voice didn't sound hostile now. It sounded light and airy, like someone encouraging him. Encouraging him to do what? 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 It would take 3 more minutes before he could speak coherently. His stomach suddenly revolted, and he began to vomit. While he retched repeatedly, almost nothing came out. That's right, he'd skipped lunch. Finley was laying on his side but could raise his head. He flinched, bringing his forearms up in front of his face when he saw his attacker step towards him. The man roughly slapped his arms away, and with his 2 gloved hands grabbing Finley's coat, yanked him to a sitting position against the pillar. Hey, a-hole, do you know who I am? What's my name? Finley's voice was no longer light and airy, it was harsh, loud, and contemptuous. Finley's very name sounded disgusting and foul. Hearing his own name again finally startled him. He was not just some nameless victim, knowing that he personally was the target of this brutality spun his mind into another world of confusion. Why? His focus returned when he felt the sharp slap delivered by his tormentor's right hand. He raised his sleeve again to wipe at the blood dripping down his cheek. Bruce, wake up, you stupid weasel. Can you hear me? The voice was again harsh and insistent. The man stared at his victim with coldly focused attention. He knew Finley was an okay lawyer for a decent law firm in the city. He made good but not great money and had a family. He wasn't a really bad guy, he did have an outsized sense of entitlement, as with most attorneys. It came to him as if a part of his diploma upon graduation from law school. And of course, he cheated on his wife. Wife, Bruce, do you know who I am? The words came out slowly, as if directed at a small child, the tone grated in Finley's head. Finley approached full, if painful, awareness. With effort, he directed his attention to the man's face. He was a normal-looking guy, a bit better looking than average, square-jawed, with wavy dark brown hair and eyebrows. His eyes looked dark, but then they were in a badly lit parking garage. He was 6 feet or so, and even covered by the wool jacket he wore, he looked very athletic and powerful. Finley had never seen him before in his life. No, I don't think. Who are you? His words were still slow and slurred. Are you sure, Bruce? Are you sure you've never seen me before, not even in a picture? The stranger's look was angry and impatient. I don't think so, no. I haven't seen you before, he spoke more clearly this time, looking at him desperately, trying to find some association, some reason to remember him. The man shook his head in exasperation, perhaps disbelief. That's too bad, Bruce. If someone's going to do something like this to you, he gave a vague wave of his hand towards Finley, indicating his general condition. If you're going to get the kicked out of you, you should at least know why, don't you think? Finley looked dumbly at the man, not knowing what to say. He watched him pace back and forth for a minute or so. His olive skin, a bit tanned, was far from pale, but his grim expression darkened him even more. Bruce, he suddenly roared Finley's name at his cowering victim. The ramp was then silent. No echo in here tonight, is there, Bruce? He paced some more, restless as a hungry predator. There are actions, things that you do that cause echoes, Bruce. For good or ill, they will bounce back at you. Tonight is your echo, Bruce. I am your echo, and I am enjoying it. Think, Bruce, think for a moment about why someone would want to do this to you. Can you think of any reason? Have you done something bad at work? Something that really pissed someone off, is that it? No, nothing at work, no, nothing there. Every word came with difficulty, the chaos in his brain again slowing his speech. Really, Bruce, his voice was low and rough. There isn't some guy out there who thinks you screwed up his case, are you sure? No, Finley mumbled and shook his head. Well, his interrogator paced in frustration for a good 20 seconds. How about your wife? Do you think Bridget could be mad enough at you to hire me? Would she pay me to deliver this little message? Bridget, how do you know? His question died in midair. He was momentarily silent under the blank stare of this stranger. He resumed, haltingly, she gets mad sometimes, he offered cautiously, but she'd never do this. Besides, I haven't. His voice trailed off into nothing. The man chuckled softly, as if in sympathy with his victim. No, I don't think Bridget would hire anyone to do anything like this. I agree with you, she is a real witch though, isn't she? You almost have my sympathies. Dealing with her must be a real chore, a real pain in the bum. You look confused, Bruce. You know, I really know a lot about you and your family. Lovely kids, by the way. You should be proud of them. But I suppose you already know that, don't you? The man took a deep breath, paced a few steps, then returned to stand directly in front of him. He looked down at Bruce in annoyance. Well, Bruce, it's not your job, and it's not your wife. What have you done that could piss someone off this much? There must be something. What is it, Bruce, that could make someone this furious with you? Eventually, the tumblers in Bruce Finley's disorganized mind clicked into place. Oh, he murmured, it's Callie. He stared at the man who had him at his mercy, and his heart started to race. You're Jack Hogan. Hogan shook his head in amazement as he fixed his intense gaze on Finley. Bruce, I hate to say it, but you don't seem like very smart people. Morality and all, did you really think it was a good idea to screw another man's wife without knowing her husband's identity or what he might do if he found out? Did you actually do that? As he spoke, he gave a spiteful smile. No, Bruce, you didn't even think about it. How long has your little affair with my wife lasted, by the way? I'm merely interested. Please excuse me, but I'm sure I could make accurate guesses. Hogan's final few words were calm and menacing. With a soft voice, Finley said, only a couple of months, in early September. Yeah, no, earlier than that, as though that would make his offense seem less serious. Hogan thought, I guess we did get right to the beginning. All I wanted to do was double-check that. Bruce, you have so far had over a dozen sexual encounters with my wife. Considering the fun you had with my wife, the few thumps I gave you don't seem like enough, do they? Hogan remained silent for a while, collecting his ideas. No, it's not nearly sufficient. I genuinely believe that this will have some additional ramifications for you, Bruce. Finley's heart sank inside. You are aware that Hogan Industries uses your firm for half of its legal work, right? We are among Hamilton Ross's top 3 clients, as far as I'm aware. You are aware of that, I'm sure. Hogan seemed to ponder for a short while. Bruce, you're leaving your company. Bruce, you can probably understand why, right? Finley slumped closer to the unyielding pillar as his stomach churned once more. The threat was there. I'll find a way that's not so graceful if you haven't left by the end of January, and Finley knew exactly what would happen and that Hogan could carry it out with ease. Looking for a company outside of the city could be a smart idea. It ought to be manageable. You'll get a solid reference. I hear you're a good lawyer. Hogan observed Finley as he took in what Hogan had said. It'll cost you a few years to get back to where you are now, that is, but then that's the price of ending another man's marriage, isn't it, Bruce? Finley raised an eyebrow at Hogan but said nothing. Bruce, I don't want you close by because of your personal safety. See, I'm in a very vengeful mood right now. Feeling that way is just not good for either of us, and I really don't like it. Bruce, if you move, temptation won't be visible to you. I will resist the urge to take any extreme measures to lessen the pain that the ensuing year or two will undoubtedly bring. Bruce, I don't like to be that kind of guy. You'll appreciate that, I'm sure of it. Jack Hogan suddenly inhaled deeply, as though he was getting ready for meditation. Bruce, I apologize for having to meet in this manner, but in my opinion, it was necessary. Allow me to explain the upcoming events. Agonizing and despairing for his future, Finley sat in silence, barely able to focus on what Hogan was saying. He looked up as Hogan went on. You're leaving for home, and no matter how you justify your actions this evening or your regrettable appearance, we've never met. You'll carry this small memory with you as you continue living your life. Of course, you won't experience any more consequences for your brief liaison with my wife, at least not from me. Hogan studied his victim for a few moments as he paced back and forth. Bruce, though, try not to dwell too much on this evening. Avoid the temptation to call the police, that would be a very bad idea. By then he was talking gently, as a patient teacher might to a pupil, and you know how I handle major mistakes. Everything I'm wearing in 30 minutes will be ashes, so there won't be any tangible proof. You see, I'll be mark-free. I won't even have bruised knuckles from wearing padded gloves. Along with a collection of superb photos of your most recent encounters with my devoted wife, I will have an alibi. Hogan appeared more composed. He spoke confidently and softly, just like he did at work every day. Finley pondered the subdued menace depicted in those images while sitting numbly. Finley's wife would have plenty of tough questions for him when he got home, so Hogan decided against sending the evidence to her. Hogan considered Finley's children, once they were out of high school, they would be better able to handle a divorce. His own children were off at college, and for that he was grateful. He could handle that later. We've established that your wife is a witch, Hogan continued. He said it, grinning at Finley. I'm not sure what she would do if she saw the direct evidence of your infidelity in the ACT. That would be unsettling. Hogan's smile took him aback. She also has more money than you, if my facts are correct, which they are. There are many good reasons for you to keep quiet. Finley gave him a numb look. Any thoughts of retaliation had long since ceased to exist. Just one more thing, and our evening is done, Hogan said, taking a quick look at his watch. In order to reach the Hilton, you must move quickly. Do you really want to be late for my wife? What? Why would I do that? Finley appeared surprised and perplexed. As planned, you will meet my soon-to-be ex-wife. She'll witness my treatment of you. That, Bruce, you promise not to mention anything like that to her. Even though you won't be around for long, you will give her a message, one that is crucial to her. You will tell her you won't be seeing her again, at the very least. She will be called a 304, a term she detests and considers to be a witch. After that, you'll apologize to her for ever having met Bruce. I would assume that by this point, it's the truth. Finley remained silent. Hogan went on, you will give her these before you leave her. He gave Finley 2 envelopes, one filled to a thickness of 1 inch and the other containing 38 by 10 pictures of Finley and Hogan's wife having sex. Then he motioned for Finley to place both items in the larger envelope and handed him a passport. The passport, some cash, and a credit card are all contained in the envelope. A ticket to Mexico City is also included. Hogan grinned to himself, recalling his wife's strong distaste for Mexico. It departs tonight at 11. Inform her that her spouse has left her. Inform her that her family has vanished. Other than the cash in that envelope, she does not have any more money. Hogan hesitated a little, as though he wasn't sure what to say next. At last, he said, inform her that Lopez will pay her a visit if she is not on that plane. Make sure that is heard by her. She'll get it. I really mean it this time. Hogan hesitated a short while. Tell her not to come back, ever. Hogan let go of the tension from the last 20 minutes with a few deep breaths. Finley, follow my instructions exactly. Remember, I'll be observing, he uttered, fixing his gaze on the motionless lawyer. If I ever have reason to see you again? Hogan hesitated a moment. He said, regretfully, well, you don't really want to know, sounding as though he was genuinely afraid of the possibility of another meeting. After turning, Hogan strode quickly up the ramp to the elevator, where he pressed the button to open it right away. He glanced at Finley just as the door was about to close. Finley sat leaning against the pillar and watched him go. After a minute, he hobbled upright and lurched over to his car. He would complete his assignments precisely and on time. He was eager to get home, exhausted and cold. Please feel free to express your opinions in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.